Judicial Service Commission has recommended the suspension of judges Chifiwa Maumela and Nomonde Mgubisa Tusi. This comes after complaints were leveled against them regarding failure to deliver numerous reserved judgments. The JSC says the judges could face gross incompetence or gross misconduct charges if enough prima facie evidence is found against them. The Commission says it will advise the President of its decision and that judges Maumela and Mgubisa Tusi finalize all matters before them. The judge is currently presiding over the Senzo Meyiwa murder trial. That's Judge Maumela. Well, for more insights on this development, I'm joined now by Freedom Under Law Chairperson Johann Kriegler. Judge Kriegler, good afternoon. Welcome to today, and thank you very much for your time. This kind of recommendation, what does it mean?
Well, then it means the end of the career of these people if the decision is carried through to its logical conclusion. It's very sad for them, but it will mean that they will be fired as judges. That's essentially what it means.
So this matter is very serious. It's very serious when complaints are leveled against them about possible incompetence or misconduct.
Oh, certainly. Then one can't overstate this. Judges perform a vital function, a very, very important function. They do it privately. They do it in the secrecy of their own conference room. They write their judgments. They make up their own minds. They give their own reasons. It's a very, very responsible job. And when somebody is not capable of doing that job, it has very serious consequences for the administration of justice, not only in the criminal courts, primarily in the criminal courts, but also in the civil courts. The courts are there to determine cases, and if they can't do that, they're just not doing their job.
So the Commissioner is going to advise the President of its decision to recommend the suspension of these two judges. What kind of options will the President have, if at all? Can he go against the JSC recommendations?
He can go against it. It's merely a recommendation. It's unlikely that he would go against it because the JSC is the specialist body that knows what it's talking about, and it can give the President sound advice. But technically, the President is not bound by what is expressly a recommendation, only a recommendation, not a decision that has to be stamped.
Yeah, so there's still going to be some investigation because I understand the JSC says the judges could be facing the serious incompetence or misconduct charges if enough prima facie evidence is found against them. Does this mean there's an ongoing investigation despite in addition to the recommendation to the President?
Yes, it does. Then it's a long and complicated process. The issue of firing judges is very, very politically sensitive. You cannot have judges fired because they give judgments which the government doesn't like. You cannot have judges being fired because they are giving unpopular judgments. But at the same time, if they're not up to the job, you must be able to get rid of them. And that is the process that's on the go at the moment here. It takes a long time.
It's going to be a long time. But we in the media, when we heard the name of one of the judges whom the JSC is recommending it should be suspended is Judge Chifiwa Maumela, who's of course been presiding over the Senzo Meyiwa murder trial, which is still dragging on. And if the suspension is then approved, the recommended suspension is approved by the President, it surely will have an impact on that Senzo Meyiwa murder trial because a new judge will have to be found.
No, Dan, that will not happen. That is most unlikely. The overwhelming probability is that Judge Maumela, although suspended, will continue and complete the trial that started before him and has been running before him. You can't just move that case to another judge. It doesn't work like that.
Okay, so Judge Maumela, despite facing this recommended suspension, would then be allowed to continue as the presiding officer in that court case?
Yes, certainly. You say allowed, I think expected is more like it. He's got to finish that job.
Yeah, otherwise it can even take this case a little bit longer. In your experience, Judge, have we faced similar situations before where two judges were recommended for suspension, facing possible charges of incompetence and misconduct in our country?
Yes, it's not the first time that judges have been found guilty of failing to deliver judgments on time. Those cases have been reported in the past. They have been dealt with in the past. These are not the first two judges that are being charged with this particular professional misconduct.
Yeah, I know that JSC has had some fair criticism recently and it's been under the microscope. One would assume that in making such a recommendation in these two particular judges, they would have had to have really seriously and carefully weighed up whatever evidence was presented to them by form of complaints.
Certainly. But, you know, the mechanism that is created by the Judicial Service Commission Act makes provision for a very, very careful investigation of any complaint against the judge. If it's not dismissed out of hand as being trivial and nonsense, it is determined by at least one and often three judges. They make a recommendation. Having decided the case maturely, they make a recommendation to the JSC. The JSC then considers it equally seriously, and then it recommends the appointment of a tribunal. Once a tribunal has been appointed, that's the real trial court of the disciplinary proceedings. That case then gets tried like any other or similar to a criminal case. And at the end of the proceedings, incidentally, the tribunal will be two judges and a lay person, one of whom has to be a woman. They will determine whether there is prima facie evidence of gross incompetence here. If they do, that will go back to the Judicial Service Commission. It must then consider it all over again. And it's only if and when it decides that indeed the judges are guilty of gross misconduct or gross incompetence that they would send the papers to Parliament for Parliament to fire the judge.
So, as you've said earlier, thanks for explaining the process, Judge Kriegler. It's going to take quite some time. Now, at a general level, how should we, just the ordinary citizens, public, when we see this, that two judges are facing with charges in the potential charges of incompetence and misconduct, how should we view the judiciary? I mean, does it mean just the JSC is doing its job properly? Should we be comforted by that?
Dan, yes. I think the public at large accepts that its judges are human, not perfect, that they do make mistakes, that they do err, and that there must be a mechanism to deal with them when that failure is of sufficient significance. That's the case here now, and I think you and I and Joe and Joan's citizen out there can be reassured that the system is working. They're not looking after incompetent judges, not protecting them, they are dealing with them.
Yeah, and that sure is a positive thing to hear, because I mean our judiciary has come under a lot of pressure, as you know, Judge Kriegler, from various quarters in recent times, even us questioning their independence and the validity of some of the rulings by the judges.
Oh, certainly, and our politics is not in a happy place. The ruling party is far too dominant. It cannot reasonably be from the seat at the next election, and therefore political debates tend to get decided in the courts, which is wrong. It should not be so, but it's a natural consequence of the deadlock in the political sphere, where Parliament would not deal with a president who had clearly misbehaved badly, notwithstanding a firm decision by the public protector. The whole state capture saga shows how essential it is that there is a judiciary when the political system stumbles. It does not mean that the judiciary is perfect. It just means that it is around to mop up when it seems to be necessary as a result of the political incapacity of the people in control to do what should be done.
Thank you very much for your time and insights this afternoon. Judge Johann Kriegler, he's of course the chairperson of Freedom Under Law, just reacting to us about the news of the recommended suspension of 2 judges by the JSC.